This is CBN NewsWatch.
And thank you so much for joining us. It is Tuesday, April 23rd. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, revenge. Sri Lanka's defense minister says that is why Islamic terrorists launched the massive deadly attacks against churches and other buildings on Easter in retaliation for the attack on mosques in New Zealand. To impeach or not to impeach, that is the question among Democrats as the party decides its next move against President Donald Trump following the Mueller report's release. While some cities have banned Chick-fil-A from some locations, one state attorney general invites it to open more restaurants in his state, and how you can fight disease by eating the right foods. We're going to show you how those foods can activate our body's defense mechanisms. All those stories and more are ahead in this edition of CBN NewsWatch. We want to begin this hour with the latest on the Sri Lanka Easter Sunday attacks. The nation's Minister of Defense now says they were carried out in retaliation for attacks on mosques on Christchurch, New Zealand in March. The defense minister made the comment before Sri Lanka's parliament, but didn't provide evidence to back up the statement or give a source for his information. The death toll now stands at 321, with another 500 injured from the attack on churches, hotels, and other sites. The Catholic Archbishop of Colombo is demanding justice for the massacre of Christian worshippers. The government says a local Islamist militant group is responsible for the attacks. The defense minister blamed weakness within Sri Lanka's security apparatus for failing to prevent the attacks. Should President Donald Trump be removed from office for obstructing justice? There's apparently a growing divide within the Democratic Party after an hour-long conference call Monday. Nancy Pelosi and party leaders say investigations will move forward, but not impeachment. Although the Mueller report found no evidence of collusion with Russians, they are focusing on at least 10 potential incidents of obstruction of justice listed in that report. One has to do with Mueller himself. The special counsel's report says the president asked former White House counsel Don McGahn to fire him. On Fox News, former Trump attorney John Dowd says he briefed the president every day about the Mueller investigation.
At no time did the president ever say, you know, John, I'm going to get rid of him. John is not going to do it. It was just the opposite. Here's the message the president had for Bob Mueller, to me, to carry. One, you tell him I respect what he's doing. Number two, you tell him he's got my full cooperation.
And Gary Lane is following this story for us today and joins us now with more. So what other potential incidents of obstruction of justice are Democrats concerned about?
James Comey. And they've said that all along. And the Mueller report said basically that the president fired Comey because Comey would not say that the president, publicly at least, say that the president was not under investigation. But the president, of course, says he was fully within his constitutional authority to hire and fire whomever he chose within the executive branch of government.
So when it comes to impeachment, why the divide within the Democratic Party? Well,
the divide, I think, Ephraim, because right now we're seeing liberal candidates for president in the Democratic Party trying to round up their base of support from the left wing of the party to get votes. They're calling for impeachment. That's very popular with those people, those voters. But the leadership is very worried because they know they probably have done some internal polling and they have found out that this is not popular with Americans, that it would definitely hurt their party. So they want to back away from that, at least for now.
How are the president's defenders responding?
Well, the president's defenders are saying, look, the special counsel found the president was not guilty of colluding with the Russians. So if he was not guilty of a crime, how could he have obstructed a crime that he was not guilty of? And that's what the president says as well. No obstruction, no collusion. Folks, let's move on.
All right, Gary, thank you so much for following this for us. I want to turn now to the Supreme Court. It's decided Monday it will wade into the thorny issue of discrimination in the workplace based on sexual identity. It will hear a trio of cases involving people who say they were fired because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. At issue, whether the 1964 federal civil rights law prohibits employment discrimination also applies to sexual orientation and gender identity. One of those cases involves a male Michigan funeral home employee who asked for permission to dress as a woman at work. Another involves a gay skydiving instructor who challenged his dismissal. And a third case pertains to a social worker who said he was fired because of his sexual orientation. Middle East nations either criticize or praise the announcement by Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to end any exemptions on sanctions for Iranian oil. As Chris Mitchell now reports from Jerusalem, the decision increased the economic pressure on the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Last November, the U.S. granted waivers to 7 countries and Taiwan to import Iranian oil. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said that grace period is over.
Today, I'm announcing that we will no longer grant any exemptions. We're going to zero across the board. Our goal has been to get countries to cease importing Iranian oil entirely.
Iran's Lebanese ally Hezbollah condemned the move.
President Trump does not care about anything, and at the same time, he is trying to punish others by accusing them of supporting terrorism. He is personally practicing and supporting terrorism.
Turkey warned of the consequences to the Middle East.
Politically, it is not right. Ethically, it is not right. In terms of commerce, it is definitely not right. And it is also against international laws of commerce, against World Trade Organization laws, and it is risky for the region's stability.
Yet during a holiday visit to Capernaum, the town where Jesus ministered, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu welcomed the decision.
President Trump and the U.S. government's decision to intensify the sanctions against Iran is a decision of very great importance. This is the way to deal with Iranian aggression, and this is the way to stop it.
The move is just the latest attempt to economically squeeze the country the State Department calls the biggest state supporter of terrorism in the world. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
I want to turn now to health news. While Washington politicians struggle with ways to lower health care costs, one leading health expert says we can fight disease with our fork. Turns out our body has 5 defense systems that are activated with food. Lori Johnson talked to Dr. William Lee, the author of Eat to Beat Disease.
You love tomatoes, but not just any tomatoes, right?
Well, foods are not all created equal, and I love tomatoes because they're not only a source of vitamins, but they also contain this natural chemical called lycopene, which actually cuts off the blood supply that can feed cancer and right-size our circulation. And in my book, I write about a study of almost 40,000 men who have eating 2 to 3 servings of cooked tomatoes, and they have a reduced risk of developing prostate cancer. I like San Marzano tomatoes, as an example, because they contain more of that lycopene. Other tomato types that actually are good are cherry tomatoes because they're tiny and potent. And then there's something called the tangerine tomato that's actually almost orangish colored.
So talk about the bread. And that's another thing. We thought bread was on the don't eat list.
Right. Well, this is where science is helping us refocus our attention. And it's not just every bread. I actually have, in my book, talk about pumpernickel bread and sourdough bread. Let's talk about pumpernickel. It's actually made with rye flour. And rye flour is a type of grain. We know whole grains are good for you. That actually lowers the level of a unhealthy bacteria that can be in our gut that produces a toxin that causes inflammation. So eating pumpernickel bread can lower that bacteria, lower inflammation. Sourdough bread, which, you know, I love sourdough bread.
Me too, and it smells great, by the way.
You know, it's got that nice tangy taste to it, is actually made with a bacteria which makes that sour flavor, that tangy flavor. And that bacteria is the same bacteria that's in our gut, a healthy gut bacteria that boosts our immune system, that helps us heal faster, and even helps our brain release the social hormone called oxytocin, which is what we get when we actually get a hug from somebody we love. For kiwi, it actually activates one of our health defense systems, that's our DNA protection. So our DNA can be damaged by the environment. You get sunshine, ultraviolet radiation, you get secondhand smoke that you breathe in, or even when you're at the filling station, if you can smell the fumes of the gas, those are toxins that can damage DNA.
And we saved the best for last, my favorite, dark chocolate. It's so great that this is so healthy for us.
Well, most people would say we don't need another reason to love chocolate. But researchers have actually shown that chocolate contains natural chemicals called polyphenols that are present in the cacao bean that can actually activate our stem cells and help us regenerate from the inside out.
And you can learn more about these healthy foods and drinks on Healthy Living. That begins this evening at 9:30 Eastern. And of course, you can find that on the CBN News Channel. Coming up, one state actually invites Chick-fil-A to open more locations while others have been banning the restaurant. We're going to take a look at the religious freedom issues involved in this when we come back.
as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline, Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
Meet the pastors who are preaching the gospel in a fresh, fearless way. I'm Roberto Torres-Cedillo. Join me each week for Next Gen Voices. And watch God transform a generation.
Check out the CBN News Daily Rundown podcast each weekday with me, Caitlin Burke. Click on the show tab at cbnnews.com where you can listen and subscribe.
The Attorney General of Montana has invited Chick-fil-A to open more restaurants in his state after two other states have taken actions against the fast food chain over its biblical stance on same-sex marriage. Republican Tim Fox wrote, "Politicians in some states may think it's okay to discriminate against others based on their religious views. That's not how we do things in Montana." Chick-fil-A currently only has one restaurant in Montana. Fox is running for governor next year. His comments came after a San Antonio City Council vote late last week against reconsidering its decision to remove the restaurant from its contract with the airport. Meanwhile, First Liberty is investigating the city's original decision and whether it violates freedom of religion. CBN's Heather Sells spoke with an attorney on that case.
What is your concern with this decision as it stands by the San Antonio City Council?
Well, the concern is that the city council members discriminated against Chick-fil-A just because it's a Christian organization that gives to other Christian organizations. This violates the Constitution and a whole host of federal regulations. By receiving federal grants, San Antonio members agree that they won't discriminate on the basis of religion, which is why First Liberty wrote the Department of Transportation and asked them to also investigate the situation. The city council members are demonstrating religious hostility, which is one of the things that the court in Masterpiece said is blatantly unconstitutional.
Right. Well, and it's interesting because when I was talking with Councilman Brockhouse today, he was saying, that San Antonio does have a non-discrimination ordinance, and to his knowledge, Chick-fil-A has not violated that, yet, they're being cast aside here.
Yeah, which is the ironic thing about it, because Chick-fil-A serves everyone, and so it would seem that the only ones discriminating are the government officials.
What are you hoping will come of your investigation at this point?
Well, we're hoping to acquire some evidence to send to the Department of Transportation and even the Texas Attorney General's office possibly to investigate their actions and hopefully get the city council members, to rethink that decision and allow Chick-fil-A in the airport.
All right. And it sounds like it's possible that things could change tomorrow night as well. I want to ask you, though, a little bit about the larger picture here, because as we know, LGBT activists seem focused right now on Chick-fil-A restaurants at airports. This is happening in Buffalo, New York, at the airport there, also in the San Jose airport. And I'm just wondering, why do you think that airport restaurants have become such a target?
It's really hard to say. I think that the most important thing to remember is that Chick-fil-A is allowed to operate just like any other restaurants, and it's unequal treatment, on the government's behalf, and to treat Chick-fil-A unlike any other restaurant. You know, they deserve the same treatment, and doing anything just because they're a Christian organization is a violation of the Constitution and federal law.
All right, and I assume you'll be watching tomorrow night's council meeting, and then that will also dictate where your investigation goes here.
Absolutely.
All right, well, Keisha Russell, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having us on.
Still ahead, though she was fighting stage 4 cancer herself, she took on the idea of the right to die, and her inspiring courage through suffering and pain became a documentary. We're going to have the story. It's all coming up right after this. Stay with us.
CBN presents The I Wills of God, your path to overcoming fear and anxiety.
We're going to talk about some of the incredible promises God has made to His children.
In Pat Robertson's newest teaching, you'll discover the I Wills of God. I will rescue him, protect him, answer him, be with him in trouble, deliver him, honor him, satisfy him with long life, show him my salvation, and see amazing stories of God's promises in action.
What I felt was loved and treasured.
God spared my life twice in 3 days.
The good Lord had given me a second chance.
Break free from stress and despair.
The Lord doesn't want you to live in fear, but to know the rewards given to those who love God.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit CBN.com. The I Wills of God, your path to overcoming fear and anxiety.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
We will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem.
As the nations rage, you can stand with Israel.
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
Call 1-800-700-7000 and get to life.
This is our nature as a country.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religious he have, which color he is. This is what I'm doing.
Support Israel in their time of need. Get to Life, now available on DVD. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com.
And I wish that other people throughout the world could see this side of Israel.
Welcome back. Kara Tippett was a popular blogger and author. She rose to national prominence when she boldly challenged a culture obsessed with the right to die. Because at the time, Kara was fighting stage 4 cancer herself, and she showed how to live courageously through suffering and pain. As John Jessup now reports, her inspiring life story has been told on the big screen.
Jay and Sophia Lyons are partners at home and on the job. Based in LA, they run a production company and share Emmys for shows like MTV's Made and TLC's My 600-Pound Life.
I don't think she's going to live much longer.
Their latest project, A Sharp Departure, a show that reflects their Christian faith and examines dealing with death.
Which sounds really
morbid.
But for Jay and Sophia, the topic can also be healthy and constructive.
It's a moment of truth and clarity for a Christian, and especially the way that the Christian community handles dying and death is a beautiful thing.
His idea turned into reality when he saw a Facebook post about a pastor's wife who needed prayer. Her name? Kara Tippett.
Hi, I'm Kara Tippett.
She and her family, including 4 young kids, had just moved to Colorado to plant a church when doctors gave her a fatal diagnosis, stage 4 breast cancer. Kara's blog took readers on a journey that captured her warmth, her compassion, and heart to share the gospel with others.
She was funny.
She was enthusiastic. She was a visionary. She had huge ideas and loved casting a vision, and her house was full of people.
She had big ideas, and she was confident, but she was very humble, and she was a sincere Christ follower.
By allowing the Lions to film her final moments, Kara shared her suffering with her friends, family, and legion of readers. Her following only grew after writing an open letter responding to another young cancer patient who publicly announced her right to die with dignity.
She did not intend for this to become some huge political storm.
I mean, it blew up.
Some saw it as a direct attack on the dying patient, but Sophia says those who did missed Kara's true heart.
She was sad because the whole point was just for her to reach out to this person, and she knew
in love, and she did reach out in love.
She did. And so I think she was sad that her point wasn't received in the way it was intended.
But now people can know her heart and will learn other valuable life lessons in the new documentary, The Long Goodbye.
It was the most sobering, sad moment of her life.
Combining professional and personal videos, the film paints an intimate portrait of a life cut short, but well lived.
I feel like I'm a little girl at a party whose dad's asking her to leave early, and I'm throwing a fit. I'm not afraid of dying. I just don't want to go.
The project taught Jay and Sophia the extent of Kara's influence, reaching people like best-selling Christian author Ann Voskamp, Johnny Erickson Tata, and even former HGTV Fixer-Upper host Joanna Gaines.
It's amazing the impact she's had on so many people's lives.
While certainly sad, the producers believed viewers watching Kara's story will walk away with hope.
I know that sounds like a weird thing to say about a movie about someone who suffers, but it is hopeful, and that was the goal of this movie, is to make it be hopeful, to learn, even though this woman, we watch her suffer and die, but you learn how to live.
It's a beautiful experience if you can set your fear aside, if you have a fear of dying, for you to see this woman who's excited about meeting Jesus.
The world says I should be angry, that I should be shaking my fist at God, but I want to be able to share this story that suffering isn't a mistake and it isn't the absence of God's goodness, because he's present in pain.
Kara's life and message still powerful today and reaching many more through this film in the future. John Jessup, CBN News.
And The Long Goodbye is now available on DVD. Coming up, while Venezuela is suffering from its political crisis, CBN's Operation Blessing is on the scene, helping refugees fleeing from the humanitarian and medical catastrophe.
As the world watches from the outside,
it's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline, Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
Meet the pastors who are preaching the gospel in a fresh, fearless way. I'm Roberto Torres-Cedillo. Join me each week for Next Gen Voices. And watch God transform a generation.
I am Region's first ROTC graduate student.
And welcome back to CBN NewsWatch. CBN's Operation Blessing is helping refugees from Venezuela. Izana and her baby Wilson could not find clean water since the food and water shortages. The pair walked for days just to reach the border of Colombia. They came across an Operation Blessing team, which was able to provide them with clean water, medical treatment, and a hot meal for both of them. Operation Blessing partners are helping hundreds of malnourished and sick refugees like Izana and little Wilson every single day. You can find out more about what Operation Blessing is doing by visiting its website. That website address is ob.org. Right now, it's time for your Tuesday Tweetable, and I certainly hope this message will inspire you and perhaps move you to post-tag tweet and share it with those in your circles. Guess what? If you have a pulse, you have a purpose. God has a plan for your life no matter what phase of life you're in. You are not too young and you are not too old to be used by God. If you've lost sight of a dream He's placed in your heart, see it again. And if you're delaying getting to work because you think you're too young, think again and get to work and be about your Father's business. If you have a pulse, you indeed have a purpose. That is going to do it for this first edition of CBN NewsWatch. Remember, you can always get more on the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com. You can also watch CBN News programs anytime throughout the day on the CBN News channel. We'd love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today, or any day for that matter. You can do that by emailing newswatch@cbn.com. And of course, you can always reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Make it a terrific Tuesday. We'll see you back here tomorrow.